What if everything we think we know about ancient history is incomplete? What if, thousands of years ago, civilizations existed with knowledge so precise that even modern engineers struggle to replicate it? Across the world, massive stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons were cut with near-perfect precision. A mechanical device was discovered in a shipwreck that behaves like an ancient computer. A map appears to show Antarctica centuries before its official discovery. And in Turkey, the 12,000-year-old temple complex predates what we thought was the beginning of civilization itself. These are not myths. They are real archaeological discoveries. And today, we're going to explore 10 historical and scientific mysteries that continue to challenge mainstream explanations. Some of them may have logical answers. Some are still debated. And some might force you to reconsider the timeline of human development. Stay until the end, because the final mystery may be the most disturbing of all. Let's begin with one of the most studied structures on Earth. Standing at the base of the Great Pyramid, you aren't looking at a building. You're looking at a mountain made by human hands. Built around 2560 BCE for Pharaoh Khufu, it remained the tallest man-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. Imagine 2.3 million blocks, each a puzzle piece in a 6 million ton masterpiece. Then there is the logistics of the lift. To build a ramp to the top of the pyramid at a manageable grade, the ramp itself would require as much material as the pyramid. No such ramp remains. French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin proposed an internal spiral ramp, which explains how they reached the top without a massive exterior footprint. It's brilliant, but it remains a theory. Inside the king's chamber, the ceiling is made of massive granite beams. These aren't local limestone. They were quarried in Aswan, 800 kilometers to the south. Each block weighs up to 80 tons. To get them here, they had to be floated down the Nile and then hauled uphill. But once they arrived, how were they cut? Granite is one of the hardest rocks on Earth. To cut it, you need something harder, like diamond or modern steel. Mainstream archaeology points to copper tools and diorite, pounding stones. But try it yourself. Copper is a soft metal. It dulls against granite almost instantly. Some theorists point to circular drill marks found on stones at Giza that suggest a feed rate. The depth the drill sinks per rotation, that rivals modern power tools. Was it just infinite patience and sand abrasives? Or are we missing a piece of their technological puzzle? Then there is the logistics of the lift. To build a ramp to the top of the pyramid at a manageable grade, the ramp itself would require as much material as the pyramid. No such ramp remains. French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin proposed an internal spiral ramp, which explains how they reached the top without a massive exterior footprint. It's brilliant, but it remains a theory. We see the Great Pyramid as a tomb because that fits our narrative of the Old Kingdom. Yet, no mummy was ever found inside Khufu's monument. No hieroglyphs adorn the inner walls of the Great Pyramid to tell us how it was built. The year is 1901, off the jagged coast of the tiny Greek island of Antikythera. Sponge divers are working the depths when they stumble upon a ghost from the past. A Roman cargo shipwreck, teeming with marble statues and ancient treasures. But among the gold and the art sat a green, encrusted lump of bronze that no one, not even the finest archaeologists of the time, could make sense of. For decades, it sat in a museum, overlooked as a corroded fragment. It wasn't until the mid-20th century, when X-ray and CT imaging technology caught up with history, Then the lump revealed its secrets. Inside were gears. Dozens of them? Hand-cut, triangular-toothed bronze gears. To understand why this discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community, we have to look at what it actually does. Dated to roughly 100 BCE, this wasn't just a clock. It was a simulator of the cosmos. By turning a single hand crank, the user could fast forward or rewind the sky. The front dial tracked the sun and the moon through the zodiac. The back dials predicted solar and lunar eclipses with terrifying accuracy, even accounting for the Babylonian sorrow cycle. The lunar secret. It even modeled the irregular orbit of the moon, an elliptical motion that wasn't supposed to be mathematically understood for centuries. It is, by every definition, the world's first analog computer. It processed a mechanical input, the turning of a crank, into a complex data output of astronomical predictions. This is where the story turns from a marvel into a mystery. If you view the history of technology as a steady climb, the Antikythera Mechanism is a massive, unexplained spike on the graph. The level of mechanical sophistication found in this device, specifically the use of differential gearing, simply does not reappear in the historical record for another millennium. We don't see anything this complex again until the great cathedral clocks of the 14th century Renaissance. It's as if you found a functional jet engine inside a Victorian carriage. It challenges everything we thought we knew about the limitations of ancient Greek engineering. The big question remains, was this the work of a lone genius? Perhaps Archimedes or a student of his? Or are we looking at the sole survivor of a lost industrial revolution of the ancient world? Bronze was a highly recyclable material. Most devices like this were likely melted down for weapons or coins during the many wars that followed the fall of the Hellenistic world. If this one ship hadn't sunk, we might never have known that the Greeks were on the verge of a mechanical age. The Antikythera Mechanism reminds us that history isn't always a straight line forward. Sometimes, knowledge is built, mastered, and then it simply vanishes into the sea. In the dusty highlands of southeastern Turkey, there is a site known as Göbekli. Literally, Potbelly Hill. For decades, it was dismissed by archaeologists as a mere medieval cemetery. But in 1994, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt looked closer at the limestone fragments peeking through the soil. What he found didn't just rewrite history. It set the entire timeline of human civilization on fire. Dated to roughly 9,600 BCE. This site is nearly 12,000 years old. To put that in perspective, it is twice as old as Stonehenge. It predates the Great Pyramid of Giza by 7,000 years. When Göbekli was being built, the woolly mammoth was still roaming the earth. The scale of the site is staggering. We are looking at massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some standing nearly 20 feet tall and weighing up to 20 tons. How did people who, according to every history book, hadn't even invented the wheel, the pulley, or pottery, manage to quarry, move, and erect these monoliths? The pillars are arranged in perfect circular enclosures. but it's the artwork that haunts the mind. The stones are alive with high-relief carvings. Snarling jaguars, scorpions, vultures, and headless human figures. This isn't just primitive art. It's a complex symbolic language. It suggests a shared mythology and a highly organized social. For a century, the standard model of history was simple. Humans invented agriculture and farming. Farming led to settlement, villages. Settlements led to religion and architecture, temples. Göbekli flips this entirely. There is no sign of domesticated grain. No permanent houses, and no water source nearby. These people were hunters. They were chasing gazelle and gathering wild plants. The evidence suggests that religion came first. It was the need to gather for a spiritual purpose. The construction of this temple on a hill that forced people to organize, stay in one place, and eventually figure out how to farm to feed the massive workforce required to move 20-ton stones. The final mystery is perhaps the strangest of all. After being used for over 1,000 years, the site wasn't destroyed by an enemy or abandoned to the elements. It was deliberately buried. Around 8000 BCE, the people of the region filled the enclosures with hundreds of cubic meters of refuse and soil, creating the Potbelly hill we see today. They preserved it like a time capsule. Why? Were they hiding it? Or was the ritual of burying the temple just as important as building it? Göbekli is a ghost that haunts our understanding of our own past. It suggests that 12,000 years ago, our ancestors weren't just surviving. They were dreaming, building, and contemplating the stars. At 12,800 feet above sea level, the air is thin, and the sun is punishing. This is the Bolivian Altiplano. Here, near the shores of Lake Titicaca, lies a site that defies the conventional timeline of human technological evolution. This is Puma Punku, the door of the Puma. It doesn't look like a temple. It looks like a high-tech construction site that was hit by a cataclysm. To understand the mystery, you have to understand the medium. The blocks here are made of red sandstone and andesite. Andesite is an igneous rock. Essentially cooled volcanic magma. It ranks a 6 or 7 on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness. To put that in perspective, granite is a 6. You cannot carve this with copper or bronze. Something harder than the stone itself. Yet the Tiwanaku culture supposedly lacked even basic iron tools. Look at the famous H blocks. They aren't just carved. They are engineered. Every interior angle is a perfect 90 degrees. The surfaces are flat to within microns. Mainstream archaeology suggests hammer stones, rounded rocks used to beat the surface into submission. But hammer stones create pitted, uneven surfaces. Puma Punku's surfaces are smooth to the touch, as if they were planed or machined. These blocks weren't just stacked. They were part of a modular system. They feature eye-shaped sockets where metal clamps likely a poured arsenic bronze alloy, were used to lock the stones together against earthquakes. This isn't just art, it's seismic engineering. The precision is so consistent across different blocks that it suggests mass production. How do you mass produce 100-ton Lego bricks with primitive hand tools? Then there is the weight. The largest block, the Plataforma Litica, weighs an estimated 131 metric tons. There are no trees at this altitude to make wooden rollers. The ground is often soft and marshy. Moving a 130-ton block across 10 kilometers of uneven terrain at 12,000 feet is a feat that would challenge a modern logistics company with heavy-duty cranes and hydraulic trailers. Critics of the mainstream view point to the drill holes. Perfectly circular, deep boreholes along the grooves of the stones. In modern masonry, we use diamond-tipped bits to achieve this. If the Tiwanaku didn't have high-speed drills, they had something even more impressive. A level of patience and manual dexterity that we can no longer comprehend. But is patience enough to explain a 90-degree interior corner that looks like it was cut with a router? Puma Punku remains a challenge to our understanding of the past. Yes, that these are our ancestors were far more brilliant engineers than we give them credit for. For there is a lost chapter of human technology that was wiped clean by time. We see the result. The precision, T. Power, T. Perfection. But the tools that created them remain buried in the dust. From the ground, the Pampa de Jumana looks like a featureless wasteland. It is one of the driest places on Earth. But as you rise, the desert floor transforms into a chalkboard. Hundreds of geoglyphs, monkeys, hummingbirds, geometric shapes stretch across the plateau. The sheer scale is our first mystery. Why build a masterpiece that you, the artist, can never truly see? These aren't carvings, they are subtractive art. By removing the dark, iron oxide-coated pebbles, the Nazca people expose the lighter-colored rock bricks. But why haven't they blown away? The desert here is virtually windless at ground level. The dark rocks absorb heat, creating a cushion of warm air that protects the lines from the wind. Nature, it seems, was the Nazca's co-conspirator in preserving their work for 2,000 years. How do you draw a 400-foot-long monkey without a drone? Experimental archaeology has shown that it's surprisingly simple, yet mathematically brilliant. By using a center point and long ropes, essentially a giant compass, the Nazca could scale up small drawings into massive geoglyphs. They didn't need to fly, they just needed to understand geometry. However, the precision of the 30-mile-long straight line, some of which deviate by only a few yards over miles, possess a mastery of surveying that rivals modern equipment. In the 1940s, Maria Wright, the Lady of the Lines, proposed that the geoglyphs were a giant astronomical calendar. She believed the lines pointed to the rising and setting points of stars in the sun during solstices. While some lines do align, many do not. This led modern researchers to a more grounded theory. In a desert where it hasn't rained in decades, what is more valuable than stars? Water. Recent studies show that many lines follow the paths of underground aquifers or lead to ritual sites, where water was worshipped. The geoglyphs weren't just art, they were processional paths. Imagine hundreds of people walking in single file, along the outline of a giant spider, chanting and making offerings to the mountain gods for rain. The lines weren't meant to be seen by human eyes from the sky. They were meant to be seen by the gods who lived in the clouds. The Nazca Lines prove that primitive does not mean simple. These people turned an entire landscape into a prayer. We don't need extraterrestrial explanations to appreciate their genius. We only need to look at the ground beneath our feet and realize that for the Nazca, the earth itself was a conversation with the divine. In 1936, workers near Baghdad uncovered a small terracotta jar that would spark a century of debate. Inside was a copper cylinder and a single iron rod, held in place by a plug of asphalt. To the untrained eye, it was a simple storage vessel. But to German archaeologist Wilhelm K. it looked like something from the future, a galvanic cell. This is the Baghdad Battery, an artifact that, if real, predates the invention of the modern battery by over 1,800 years. The design is hauntingly deliberate. The iron rod is suspended inside the copper cylinder, but they never touch. They are separated by bitumen, a natural asphalt that acts as a perfect insulator. For this to function, you only need one more thing: an electrolyte. Experiments have shown that filling the jar with common ancient liquids like vinegar, lemon juice, or fermented grape juice triggers a chemical reaction. The result? About 1.1 to 2 volts of electricity. Enough to power a small lead today. But what did they use it for in 200 BCE? KNIG's most famous theory was electroplating. He had seen silver objects from the region covered in impossibly thin layers of gold, while fire gilding, using mercury, was the standard. Electroplating would have been cleaner and more efficient. In 2005. Mythbusters team successfully used 10 battery replicas to electroplate a small token. However, there's a catch. Archaeologists have yet to find any wires, connectors, or ancient circuitry at the site. archaeologists, including Dr. Elizabeth Stone, argue for a simpler explanation. They point to similar jars found in nearby Sacsayhuamán used to store sacred scrolls. In this view, copper was a protective sleeve, and the iron rod was simply a core to wrap the papyrus around. The acidic residue found inside, that could be the remains of decomposed organic matter from the scroll itself. It fits the Occam's razor approach, but it doesn't explain why the metals were chosen for their specific electrochemical potential. The mystery became even deeper in 2003, during the invasion of Iraq. The National Museum was looted. Thousands of artifacts vanished, and among the missing was the original Baghdad Battery. Without the primary artifact to test with modern mass spectrometry and ion diffusion analysis, we are left with only the notes of the past. The battery that could have rewritten history is now a ghost, likely sitting in a private collection or lost to time. Whether a tool for magicians to give divine shocks, a jeweler's secret for gilding, or a simple container for a holy word, the Baghdad Battery forces us to ask, did our ancestors discover the spark of the gods and simply let it fade? Or are we just now rediscovering a science they had already mastered? The truth is buried in the sand. 1929, while cataloging the library of the Topkapi Palace, a theologian made a discovery that would shock the world of cartography. It was a fragment of a world map, painted on gazelle skin, dated to the year 1513. Its author was the Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis. But as researchers looked closer, they realized this wasn't just another 16th century chart. It showed the Americas, the Atlantic, and a mysterious landmass to the south, all with a level of detail that shouldn't have been possible. Piri Reis wasn't just a sailor, he was a scholar. In his own notes on the map, he admits he didn't survey the whole world himself. He compiled it from 20 different source maps. Most interestingly, he claims to have used a map from Christopher Columbus. If true, this fragment may be the only surviving evidence of the maps Columbus used to navigate the New World. Suggesting that Columbus knew exactly where he was going before he even left Spain. Here is where the miracle begins. The map shows a coastline stretching south, and then turning sharply east. In the 1950s, Professor Charles Hapgood argued that this wasn't a mistake. It was Antarctica. Specifically, he claimed it depicted the Queen Maud Land coast without ice. Subglacial seismic surveys have since confirmed that the Piri Reis coastline matches the actual landmass beneath the ice. But there's a problem. That coast hasn't been ice-free for at least 6,000 years. Did Piri Reis have access to maps from a lost, prehistoric civilization? To understand the precision, we have to look at how it was made. This is a Portland chart, characterized by a web of rum lines used for navigation. Unlike modern maps that use longitude and latitude, Portland charts were based on magnetic headings. Scholars have noted that the Piri Reis map uses a Mercator-like projection centuries before Mercator. The mathematical sophisticated required to flatten a spherical Earth onto gazelle skin, with this accuracy suggests a mastery of trigonometry that few in the 1500s possessed. Mainstream historians offer a more grounded explanation. They argue the Antarctic coast is actually just a distorted version of the South American coastline, bent to fit the shape of the gazelle skin. Cartographers of the era often drew a Terra Austria at the bottom of maps simply because they believed the southern continent had to exist to balance the weight of the northern lands. Is it a miraculous depiction of an ice-free pole? Or just a lucky guess by a skilled artist, running out of room on his parchment? Regardless of the interpretation, the Piri Reis Map remains a masterpiece of the Ottoman Golden Age. It stands as a bridge between the medieval world and the modern one. A reminder that our ancestors were looking at the horizon with eyes far more capable than we often assume. Was it a compilation of lost knowledge? Or a brilliant work of art? The map remains, but the source of its secrets remains offshore. While the Egyptians were building pyramids for the dead, the people of the Indus Valley were building perfection for the living. Spanning an area larger than Western Europe, this was a civilization of engineers. Their cities, like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, weren't just settlements, they were masterpieces of urban planning. Streets laid out in perfect grids, multi-story brick houses, and a sanitation system that wouldn't be rivaled until the Roman Empire. But then, it all stopped. Here is the first miracle. There are no palaces, no massive temples, no monuments to kings or pharaohs. Instead, we find the Great Bath, a sophisticated public water tank lined with natural tar to keep it watertight. The Indus people seem to value hygiene and trade over military conquest. We found their standardized weights and measures as far away as Mesopotamia. They were a middle-class superpower, thriving on commerce rather than combat. Why don't we know their names? Because of the 400 unique symbols they left behind. Despite over 100 years of effort, the Indus script remains undeciphered. Unlike the Rosetta Stone, which unlocked Egyptian hieroglyphs, we have no bilingual text to bridge the gap. We are looking at their records, their receipts, and their stories, but they remain silent. This lack of a written history is why their disappearance feels like such a ghost story. For decades, we blamed an Aryan invasion, but modern DNA and archaeological evidence have largely debunked that theory. The real killer was much slower. New research into Himalayan stalagmites reveals that around 1900 BCE, a massive 200-year drought struck the region. The monsoon rains, which the Indus people relied on for their surplus of wheat and barley, shifted or failed entirely. As the rivers moved or dried up, the lifeblood of the cities vanished. This wasn't a sudden collapse. It was an unbuilding. People didn't die out all at once. They walked away. You see the brickwork get sloppier in the later layers. The drainage system stopped being maintained. The fact miracle here isn't a cataclysmic war, but a gradual migration. The sophisticated city dwellers became simple farmers again, moving east and south, carrying their culture into the DNA of modern India and Pakistan. It is the Holy Grail of cryptography. A 240-page book written in a language that doesn't exist on any map. Discovered in 1912 by book dealer Wilfred Voynich. This 15th century manuscript has resisted every attempt to be read. from the code breakers of Bletchley Park to modern supercomputers, the Voynich Manuscript remains a perfect, uncrackable cipher. For years, skeptics called it a modern hoax. But in 2009, the University of Arizona performed carbon-14 dating on the vellum. The result? The parchment dates back to the early 15th century. This wasn't a 20th century fake. Someone in the 1400s spent an incredible amount of time and money to create a document that, for all intents and purposes, says absolutely nothing to the outside world. The book is heavily illustrated. The verbal section contains drawings of plants. But here is the catch. Almost none of them can be identified as known species on Earth. Some look like frankenplants, the roots of one species attached to the leaves of another. Is it a catalog of extinct medicinal plants, or the flora of a purely imaginary world? Then there are the nymphs. The book contains strange diagrams of women bathing in interconnected green pools and elaborate plumbing systems that look like human organs. Some researchers believe this section refers to medieval alchemy or early women's health. Others see a map of the stars reflected in the water. It is as if the author were trying to explain the very plumbing of the universe. Linguistically, the book is a paradox. It follows Zipf's law, the mathematical pattern found in all natural languages, where the most frequent word occurs twice as often as the second most frequent. This suggests that Voynich isn't random gibberish, it has the structure of a language. If it is a hoax, it's a hoax so sophisticated it fools mathematical laws. Is it a diary of a brilliant mind lost to madness? A sophisticated 15th century puzzle? Or a forgotten language that died with its last speaker? Today, it sits in the Voynich Library at Yale, silent and defiant. The Voynich Manuscript doesn't just hide a secret. It reminds us that there are still things in this world that we simply do not understand. In Peru, near Cusco, lies Sacsayhuamán. Massive polygonal stone blocks fit together without mortar. Some weigh over 100 tons. The stones are shaped so precisely that even a knife blade cannot pass between them. Earthquake resistance suggests deep engineering knowledge. Mainstream archaeology credits the Inca with exceptional stonework skills. But how exactly were such stones transported and shaped? The method is still debated. After exploring the Great Pyramid, the Antikythera Mechanism, Göbekli, Puma Punku, the Nazca Lines, the Baghdad Battery, the Piri Reis Map, the Indus Valley civilisation, the Voynich Manuscript, and Sacsayhuamán. One thing becomes clear. History is not as simple as we were taught. Each of these mysteries challenges a comfortable assumption that ancient civilizations were primitive, that knowledge evolved in a straight line. The Great Pyramid still forces engineers to debate its construction methods. The Antikythera Mechanism proves mechanical sophistication thousands of years earlier than expected. Göbekli Tepe writes the timeline of organized society. Puma Punku and Sacsayhuamán showcase stone precision that feels almost modern. The Nazca Lines raise questions about purpose and perspective. The Baghdad Battery suggests early experimentation with electricity. The Piri Reis Map hints at geographic knowledge that seems advanced for its time. The Indus Valley civilization demonstrates urban planning that rivals later empires. And the Voynich Manuscript remains unreadable, defying linguists even today. None of these mysteries alone overturns history, but together, they force us to reconsider it. Perhaps ancient civilizations were not more advanced in the way we imagine. No lasers, no lost supercomputers, but they may have possessed knowledge systems, engineering methods, and scientific understanding that we still don't fully comprehend. The real mystery may not be lost technology. It may be lost knowledge. Knowledge forgotten, erased, buried by time, or simply misunderstood by us. History is not wrong, but it is incomplete. And every generation must re-examine the past with better tools, better science, and better questions. So the real question is not whether ancient civilizations had advanced technology. The real question is, what else have we overlooked? If this exploration made you think differently about the past, let me know in the comments which mystery surprised you the most. Because sometimes, the greatest discoveries are not about the future. They are about rediscovering the past.